I like to touch on this idea of seeing. Let me show you 3 quotes. This is Henry Matisse that says, "Creation begins with vision." This is Augustine Rodin who says, "The only thing is to see." This is Huineng who said, "The meaning of life is to see." Now, when we get look into art, so much about teaching what art is and how to make art, how to dance, how to design. It's about teaching people how to look, how to see something, how to see what the materials are doing. If I was to teach you how to draw, I might tell you, don't pay attention to the marks the pencil is making on the page, but rather look at what you're drawing. Look at this round shape and see where is the light hitting it, and let the pencil just reflect that as it moves on the page. Don't get caught up with, does this look like that? Just see what's out there in the world. So much of drawing is about learning how to look. So much of dancing is about learning how to look and feel within the movements. This is a great little story. Bruce Jensen, who was an editor for Lens magazine, he was a photographer. He told the story, I have 2 Korat cats. Now, Korat cats are these big, I think these big solid gray cats. Yeah, I had a friend in New York that had 2 of them also. Yeah, and you didn't know which ones were which if you have 2 of them, because they were, Bruce Jensen's cats were identical. Yeah, 2 Korat cats. Now, what he said about the story of these cats, he says, well, what's interesting to me is most people who encounter them only see their similarities. What I see is their differences. Now, that teaches me a lot about art, because rather than just look how everything is the same, it's the artist who sees how is the light different on the body when it comes from the front, when it comes from the side. How do I render that if I'm drawing it? How do I move? And in this kind of space, in that kind of space, that all of those things are the differences. How do I see and experience what's there? Aesthetic universals. Andy Warhol, who was a sensational pop artist. So you always have to love Andy Warhol, because he would always throw a wrench in everything and shake it all up here. But Warhol was one of the first that said, well, if it was made by an artist, then it would come out as art. Yeah, and that some of that might be true. That we can think, oh, if Andy Warhol did it, he's an artist, he's famous, his works sell for so much, so it must be art. Now, this is Dennis Dutton. And Dennis Dutton, 1944 to 2010, Dennis Dutton felt that, well, what he looked for as a philosopher, he thought there were certain signatures that a work of art should have. There were certain things that we should be able to see that make this. This has a fingerprint, a signature that makes it belong in a museum, and he looked for those things in a work of art. Yeah, when some of you talked about what is art, some of you talked about some of you would hit on some of his signatures. There are 12 of them that we're going to go over. Now, for our test, I'm not going to have you list the signatures. You should just know that Dennis Dutton talked about aesthetic universals. And the aesthetic universals were these signatures that artworks could have. Here they are. That a work of art gives us pleasure. And it was that kind of pleasure that it did something for us deeply, that it did not have to nourish us or do anything utilitarian. But there is something pleasurable about going to a play or a dance concert or going to a museum. Yeah. Recently, with our pandemic, people have said, "I just can't wait to get back to the theater. I just can't wait to get to the museums, and just to float and to be next to people around a painting and not have to be so distanced from that." So, direct pleasure. Skill or virtuosity, that a work of art required technique and skill and ability. Yeah, most of us know that. That's why we'll go to school to study the arts, that we'll want to really sit within a technique, and we'll want to sit with mentors who can teach us about how to look at works of art, how to make art, how to manipulate movement, that we're wanting to know the skills and we're wanting to work on our virtuosity in those skills. Works of art have style to them, that artistic objects and performances, they develop from recognizable styles and forms, that we can even see how the museum is organized because of the styles of the piece. In the dance world, many of you know there's styles and genres of ballet and modern dance and tap and jazz dance, that we see those styles in works of art. That is a part of it. We like novelty and we like creativity. We like when someone does something unexpected. The institution likes when when an artist does something unexpected and pushes the boundaries of how we see something. We like innovation in the world. Criticism. This is Kant, that people make a point of judging and appreciating a work of art when we encounter it. There's a mystery about it. There's something we like to solve. What could this mean? Why might someone make this? Why might this exist in the world and people think it precious? Yeah, we like that critical connection with the work. Works of art can represent, now we're sounding like Plato again, that works of art have the ability to reflect the world around us, and they give us metaphors where we can, in a painting, here we can see this city. Special focus, that works of art are different from reality. Yeah, now we're sounding like Aristotle. Yeah, that the painting, we know it's not real. I can look at this angry face here, and that would be very different encountering this painting than it would be to encounter this person in real life. Yeah, and that's what Aristotle said was a safe place, the catharsis, a cathartic place where these feelings could be expressed. I could feel them, and it's not like I was in this confrontation with this person or having to deal. We know it's make-believe. We like going to Hamlet, even though it's a tragedy. We like having a good cry. It lets something happen, lets us feel something. So special focus. Some people said this in their What is Art, that works of art allow people to express their individuality. So there's something about self-expression in them, that we can look at a work and we can see a point of view of somebody else and the opportunity that person had for creating something of beauty. There's emotional saturation in a work of art, that works of art can contain and express emotion. Langer really liked that idea, that this was just a form that housed feeling. Works of art could challenge us. We often liked having something, that we were like, how can this be a work of art? So we tended to like that challenge of the world through a work of art. Yeah, and the institution even likes that. That works of art can show us traditions and institutions. So even the traditions, that we can see history in work of art And this links a little bit when we were talking about we can see styles, but we can also see institutions within that. Yeah, go to the medieval section of a museum, and you will always learn about religion, because so many of the works were wrapped around religious iconography. Works of art were an imaginative experience, and we liked that imagination. They develop from the imaginations of their creators. We like looking into the window of someone seeing these possibilities. So that's Dennis Dutton, and his ideas. We could be critical of them, because someone might say that it's a little too programmatic, that art can do these things and sometimes art does other things, some people. But I often appreciate him because he hits some of the major signatures that are out there in our art institutions and in our art forms. Yeah. Let's touch on this, because this is important in terms of process. And those of you who are artists often know this feeling of, when do I feel like I have a relationship with the work I'm creating and that I'm on to something? I love that idea of being on to something, that I found a golden thread here. I'm suddenly not just finding anything, I'm finding gold in something, that this is important and happening. And usually I say there's a point for a choreographer. There's a moment when the piece suddenly becomes more than just a bunch of movements. They're starting to feel the inner life of the piece, and they know what it is, and that's a fascinating thing. How much do I control what is happening, and how much is it telling me? So this is an intimate relationship that the artist has with their materials that they are transforming. This is Alan Nikolayan. He said, interesting thing, he said, there's a moment when the dance is done and I look at it and wonder, how did I come up with that? And that's a fun thing, because suddenly the artwork has a life of its own, and the artist is just like, how those things just happen. They all came together in a kind of wonderful way. What Claude Bell talks about significant form, that feels like that also, that we do that. Yeah. And an artist is usually the one that we trust to tell us when a work of art is done, that they quit doing it. Sometimes they'll leave unfinished works, but if we present a dance in a concert, that's usually a signal that this piece is done. If there was a play, most costume designers hope that the costumes are finished before the audience arrives, or at least by tech, that these things are done and finished. In the visual arts, an artist will sign a canvas, and that's a mark that they're done with it. They think that it's complete. They're putting their name on it. Yeah, so we trust the artist. Now that doesn't mean that a choreographer might not come back later and keep working on it, redo it in a different way, bring it to its 2.0 version, but usually we trust the artist for, when is it done? Do you think it's done? Yeah, that's a good kind of point with it.